أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My name is Asif Ali Parvez and this is my presentation number 13. And I keep reminding you the theme of my all these presentation or program is Holy Quran and Science. Now in this presentation I will discuss that Professor Abdus Salam Sahib won the Nobel Prize along with his two colleagues in 1979. But all these three scientists did the research independently. And this picture which I'm showing you is when he's receiving the Nobel Prize. So there were three scientists. Obviously one was Professor Abdus Salam Sahib. Second is Sheldon Glashow. And third is Stephen Weinberg. Sheldon and Stephen are American scientists. Again, theoretical physicists like Professor Abdus Salam Sahib. And they worked independently of each other. And the topic of their research was on weak nuclear force, which I have been discussing in last two programs, and electromagnetic force. And in one sentence, what they discovered, that electromagnetic force and the weak nuclear force has same source. That means these two forces can be combined as one. So again I repeat, their discovery is two forces, electromagnetic force and weak nuclear force can be combined as one force. Now, normally, while I'm talking to you today, for example, we scientists know that electromagnetic force is separate and weak nuclear force separate. And in my program, as I mentioned, electromagnetic force keeps the electron and the nucleus together, so atom together. And weak nuclear force is in the nucleus of the atom. So they are two distinct forces. But having said that, Professor Abdus Salam Sahib and his two colleagues mathematically discovered that if the temperature goes extremely high, and this is the temperature range which they mentioned, is 1,000 million degrees. Think for a minute. 1,000 million degrees. And you know, water boils only at 100 degrees. And the temperature of sun is very small as compared to this one. So it's a very big temperature. Nobody can comprehend. I can't even think how hot that will be. But Professor Abdus Salam Sahib said that when the temperature becomes that high, then these two forces combine and become one force. And the only time when this temperature was ever achieved, when Allah Ta'ala opened up the universe, which scientists called as the Big Bang. So in a very short period, and that period just for scientists we call it 10 to the power roughly minus 50 of a second. So we can't even comprehend how short that period was. But having said that, Professor Abdus Salam Sahib and his colleagues discovered that God has made these forces one force. Now, what is the importance of this? That I will discuss in few programs later. Now, this theory, and of course, there is a lot of science behind these theories. I deliberately don't want to go into that because otherwise most of you will not be able to follow me. So important thing is to understand the message And message is these two forces are one. And also this theory predicted that there will be a lot or more particles. And first they were given the name W plus. So W is letter W. And plus means it has a positive charge. And there is W minus, that means it has a negative charge. And they are Z bosons. Now this gentleman whose picture I'm showing you, his name is Professor Higgs. He was actually working with Professor Abdus Salam Saab when he was the head of department at Imperial College. The young Higgs at that time joined him doing his postdoctoral research. He had done a PhD, but he wanted to do further research under the guidance of Professor Abdus Salam Saab. And he, I must say, is the one who discovered Z boson. Although Professor Abdus Salam Saab theory did say that you should be another particle. And this particle was discovered at the Large Hadron Collider, which is in Geneva, the biggest machine on scientific machine on the Earth. And sometime I will make a program about that. It was discovered in 2012, and Professor Higgs with another colleague was awarded Nobel Prize. And the experimental team who discovered this were awarded also Nobel Prize next year. So that shows what kind of theory it was. It has revolutionized what we call the particle physics. Particles is one of the most important branch in physics. And unless you have gone a very high level of science, you probably wouldn't understand it. And this particle, which later called Higgs boson, was dubbed the name as God's particle. Again, as I said, I shall be making program to show the importance of this and the importance of particle physics. There is a model which we scientists called as the standard model of elementary particles. And I'll probably be talking a little bit about it in my next program. This is, you can say, the blueprint of creation of universe. You know, like just DNA, scientists think that's where, you know, whatever we are going to be in our life is already imprinted. And people who have got a biology degree or something, they know what I mean by DNA. I don't want to go into that. That's not my area of expertise. But only I can say that this standard model is blueprint. And when I will show you, more than a dozen scientists have won the Nobel Prize developing this. But let's leave it to the next program. And there's, as I said, there's a blueprint of Earth, Moon, Sun, solar system, galaxies, universe. It's all hidden in that chart. Now, the other thing which I believe is that there will be new technologies which will be discovered. People often ask me, you understand probably more than a common man, what Professor Abdus Salam Saab have achieved. And one of the things I say to them, this combining of these forces is very important on its own right. But having said that, in my opinion, either in this century or in the next century, new inventions will be made. And I quote the example. I said, think of this scientist who said the electricity and magnetism is one force. And I have made a program about James Maxwell who said that. So please do watch. It is in the playlist. And he was a mathematician, a British scientist. And when he did it, and I remember when I was doing my MSc in physics 50 years ago, we used to study, and they are very complex equations, all maths. And at that time, probably maybe 10, 20, 30 people could understand what he was saying. But then, approximately 50 years after his discovery of saying electricity and magnetism one force, the power stations were developed. Electricity was produced. And today, you know, all our modern inventions like computers, satellites, mobile, and think of any modern invention which we use is because James Maxwell said, electricity and magnetism are one force. That is the secret. Being a one force, electric motors were developed. And now you can imagine, even your car wouldn't start because there is a starter motor in it. And if the starter motor is not working, your car won't start. And that use, as the name says, a motor. And motor is everywhere, you could think. Wherever you go, there is a motor. And that was all because James Maxwell said electricity and magnetism are one force. And same is true what Professor Abdus Salam and his two scientists have said, that electromagnetic force and weak nuclear force are one. I don't know what kind of invention there will be, but I can certainly see that my grandchildren will have some device in their hand. I mean, nowadays, who can live without a mobile? We all use them. I use them all the time. This is my lifeline, and I'm sure it's your lifeline too. And surely our great-great-grandchildren will have some device like this, of which will do wonders. I don't know what those wonders are, but I'm pretty certain. I predict this thing, that this is bound to happen. And then people will remember the professor of this device, or whatever that device will be, is because Professor Abdus Salam said that electromagnetic force and weak nuclear force are one. Now I want to turn towards the Holy Quran, and this is Surah Fatiha, which I have referenced many times in my last few lectures. So I read, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. And I stop, and its translation is, all praise belongs to Allah, Lord of all the worlds, the gracious, the merciful, master of the day of judgment. And I want my viewers to focus on this part of verse, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, the gracious, the merciful. Now, I know the translation of Holy Quran. You know, when I'm reading Arabic, I know in Urdu or in English what is written there. But I must say I'm not an expert in Arabic, even though I've studied Arabic a little bit in school and a little bit when I was doing my degree. So I checked with the experts, and I asked them a question. Normally we were taught that the words in Arabic have a root, and in English we call it trilateral root, or in Urdu or Arabic we used to call it harufe talata. So the root of this word Ar-Rahman as well as Ar-Rahim is Ra, Ha, Mim. Again I repeat, root is Ra, Ha, Mim. So Ra, from Ra, Ha, Mim, the Ar-Rahman is deducted, and same is Ar-Rahim. So the root is common. And if you think about it, and I have explained it, the electromagnetic force is an example of God's attribute of Rahman. And weak nuclear force is an example of the God's attribute Ar-Rahim. And they have a common root. So this is my opinion. And this, again I repeat, this is my opinion. Nobody should attribute it to somebody else. That these two words, Rahman and Rahim, if you think about it and ponder about it, has got hidden that theory which Professor Abdus Salam Sahab and his two colleagues presented to the world. And it has some very important thing as well, which I will explain in my future lectures, why I see that the joining of these two forces have a great importance. Now I want to turn towards Holy Quran again, and I have mentioned this verse before, but I read, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. And its translation is, Holy is He who created all things in pairs, and what the earth grows, and of themselves, and what they know not. Surah Yasin, verse 37. Now I want you to focus the attention on the last part, and what they know not. So Allah Ta'ala is saying, when Holy Quran was revealed, nobody knew about these pairs, that they are pairs in particles. But remember, Allah Ta'ala created these particles in the first period of creation. And all these programs are referred to the first period of creation. So, in my opinion, the weak nuclear force is a pair with the particles which I mentioned before, a W plus particle, W minus particle, Z boson, and Higgs boson. And as I said in the next program, I will probably give you a little bit more detail about these particles. And interesting thing is that W, as you can see, is a pair in its own self. So Allah Ta'ala says, and He has created pair, what they don't know. So at one time they will learn about it, but at the time when this verse was revealed, they don't know. And similarly, Z boson has pair, and Higgs boson have its pair. Now in my next program, I think it's appropriate to discuss what Professor Abdus Salam Saab's contribution are for this science. He has made tremendous contribution. Unfortunately, the country where he was born, I mean Pakistan, although the science community recognizes what he has done, but the community in large, because of prejudice against Ahmadi Muslims and because of prejudice of ignorant mullahs and some politicians, Professor Salam Saab's name is not recognized as he deserved to be. He has done tremendous service for Pakistan, and he has done tremendous service for the world at large and the humanity. So I shall be discussing that program. So please do watch it, and then you will realize what kind of person he was. Thank you very much for listening to me. Jazakallah khair. God bless you. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.